This woman has lived for over 15,000 years. Every 100 years, she soaks herself in a primal liquid made from human bodies. After the ritual, her sagging skin instantly becomes tight and smooth, like that of an 18-year-old girl. However, this primal liquid is extremely scarce. A small bottle like this requires the life essence of 100 adult humans to produce. Humans on Earth simply can't afford it, nor do they have the technology to extract it. The only place that possesses this technology is in the farthest reaches of the vast universe, on a planet that has stood for trillions of years, Abrasax. The technology here is highly advanced. Among the most powerful forces is the Abrasax dynasty, which controls the distribution rights of the entire galactic system. This is a planet that has just been harvested, and once thriving metropolises have now turned desolate and lifeless. The residents of Abrasax have extremely long lifespans. Living for tens of thousands of years is common for them. For them, the only scarce resource is the immortality serum cultivated from human beings. Ever since the assassination of the former queen of Abrasax, a succession issue has arisen within the dynasty. The three main heirs of the dynasty, Balum, Galactic, and Titus, each inherited a portion of the galactic wealth. However, the most valuable and populous planet, Earth, became the object of desire. Both princes secretly vied for ownership of Earth. In the end, Balum inherited it, but with the Queen's reincarnation on Earth, Earth's inheritance took a turn. Before the protagonist was even born, she had already caused the death of her father. Her heartbroken mother and aunt smuggled her, still unborn, to the United States. She was born in an unknown location somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Her mother believed the child had a hard fate and named her Jupiter. Growing up, Jupiter had no father and no nationality. She and her mother could only live in her aunt's house. Reality was cruel, and like many others, the young and beautiful Jupiter dreamed of achieving great things, but she soon discovered that her fate was to clean toilets. Scrubbing and scrubbing, she supported her family. You could say that every dish on the family table was earned through her toilet scrubbing. Yet despite working from dawn to dusk, she still couldn't satisfy her family's increasingly indulgent lifestyle. Jupiter always fantasized that one day her fate would take a sudden turn. Like her father, she longed for the stars and the vastness of the universe. To raise funds to buy a telescope, her cousin came up with a terrible idea. He introduced her to an underground clinic where she could sell her eggs, and they would split the money 50-50 after the deal. After some consideration, to her surprise, Jupiter agreed. However, she was unaware that multiple forces had already been lurking around the clinic. A genetically modified wolf hybrid named Caine had tracked Jupiter to the clinic. Using a black hole device, Caine infiltrated the clinic and, using his wolf-like abilities, discovered that the DNA of the woman who signed the egg-selling contract matched perfectly with the DNA of the queen. But his every move was being closely watched by 3 bounty hunters stationed on the roof. It turned out that both sides had come to Earth for Jupiter. In an attempt to eliminate their competition, the bounty hunters surrounded Caine inside the clinic. Realizing he had been followed, Caine quickly activated a protective shield and launched his flight boots, bursting through the clinic's doors as the battle broke out. Under the fierce attacks from the bounty hunters, even the battle-hardened Caine had no choice but to retreat for the moment. He escaped from under the bounty hunters' noses without a scratch. These bounty hunters, employed by Balum, had also received an offer from Galactic, the second heir to the throne. Meanwhile, a massive noble spacecraft traveled across the universe, appearing near the turbulent beast of planet. After passing through the storm's disguise, it entered the planet's interior. As Balum disembarked from the ship, his chief steward and subordinates hurried to greet him. Upon learning that Jupiter was the Queen's reincarnation, Balum didn't hesitate. He ordered that his former mother be killed as quickly as possible. Without a doubt, the Queen's reincarnation posed a direct threat to the wealth he had inherited. Even though the recently harvested planet was rich in resources, it paled in comparison to Earth. Back on distant Earth, as Jupiter lay on the operating table, she realized things weren't as simple as she had imagined. Her hands and feet were bound, and there was a strange look on the doctor's face. Then, even more bizarrely, Jupiter's body began to float inexplicably, beyond her control. After confirming her identity, the doctor attempted to kill her. Just as the doctor was about to make his move, Caine, hired by Titus, suddenly burst in, firing several shots. The doctors shed their human disguises, revealing their true identities. They were hideous aliens. Caine's mission was to protect Jupiter and take her back to Titus' palace. As for these aliens disguised as doctors, they were under orders from Balum. Their previous task had been to remain hidden on Earth, watching over humanity. When Titus learned that Jupiter had been saved, he eagerly ordered his men to send a ship for their extraction. Upon hearing that Jupiter had been rescued, Balum flew into a rage, deploying an entire armed fleet to destroy any ship approaching Earth. Jupiter asked Caine why the aliens wanted to kill her. Caine explained everything, discovering that not only was she the reincarnation of a queen, but also caught in the middle of a conflict between the three dynastic heirs, left Jupiter stunned and overwhelmed, despite her initial disbelief. In order to avoid being hunted by the alien forces, she chose to trust Caine. As the two prepared to leave, several enemy attack ships suddenly appeared in the distance, quickly destroying the ship sent to extract Caine. Fortunately, Caine's hover boots, a true marvel of technology, saved Jupiter just in time. Otherwise, her fate would have been sealed. A thrilling chase immediately unfolded in the skies above the bustling city. Using his exceptional hoverboarding skills, Caine dodged the enemy's relentless attacks again and again. The entire city was soon ablaze with gunfire, and skyscrapers were riddled with holes from the intense battle. As a genetically engineered soldier designed for combat, Caine used his superior tactical skills and flight boots to outmaneuver the enemy at every turn. After a series of breathtaking maneuvers, he managed to hijack one of the enemy's ships, engaging in a fierce dogfight. In no time, Caine decimated the alien hunters, defeating them all. However, their craft had also taken severe damage. As the ship plummeted toward the ground, Jupiter braced for impact, but Caine acted swiftly, grabbing her just before they hit the ground. With a sharp, well-timed stop, they landed smoothly. As for the destroyed buildings, they would gradually be restored to their original state, and the memories of all the witnesses, they would be completely erased by the aliens. Just yesterday, Jupiter was still a janitor, and now, after experiencing so many bizarre events in a single day, she started to wonder if she was dreaming, but seeing Caine injured snapped her back to reality. Jupiter hurriedly pulled out a personal item and used it to stop his bleeding. This kind of quick thinking, she thought, is something a man would never come up with. To escape from the alien hunters chasing them, Caine took Jupiter to a safe house located in the Valley of Flowers. The reason the safe house was so secure was that it was protected by an extraordinary person. In this valley, all the bees bowed to Jupiter and obeyed her commands. Bees, by their nature, only serve those with the aura of a queen. Stinger, stunned by this, immediately knelt and paid his respects to her like a subject to his monarch. While Stinger tended to Caine's injuries, Jupiter learned that both men had once been members of the Flying Legion, and both had wings at one time. However, Caine had attacked a member of the royal family, violating military law, which led the intergalactic court to strip him of his wings. As Caine's commanding officer, Stinger was also punished alongside him. They both had the chance to regain their wings if they could successfully bring Jupiter back. Stinger then contacted the Galactic Federation, arranging for a ship to come and pick them up the next day. But Balum had already issued an order to lock down the entire planet, intent on killing Jupiter. Without proper preparation, they might not survive the night. For safety's sake, Caine immediately went to the warehouse to gather weapons. Stinger explained to Jupiter that on Abrasax, one's social status is determined by the quality of their genes. For example, members of the Abrasax dynasty were born with superior genes. Other humans, however, could choose to combine their DNA with that of animals, becoming powerful gene warriors to protect the royal family. During their conversation, Jupiter learned that humanity originated from the planet Orus in the Canobron system. About 1 billion years ago, the Earth was ruled by theropod dinosaurs. To ensure that human civilization wouldn't be preyed upon by dinosaurs, the Abrasax dynasty eradicated all the dinosaurs on Earth. Then, through genetic engineering, they combined the reproductive genes of existing Earth species to rapidly create modern humans. When Earth's population reached a critical mass, that's when they would begin their harvest. Just as Jupiter was puzzling over what harvest meant, the bees in the valley sounded an alarm, indicating danger. Caine sensed something was wrong. Stinger quickly moved to cover Jupiter's escape, leaving Caine to hold off the attackers. He raised his gun and unleashed a barrage of fire, but in the next moment, an explosion sent him flying. The bounty hunters and Earth Sentinels had surrounded the house. Stinger, who hadn't been in combat for years, found his fighting skills greatly diminished. He was hit hard by a massive magnetic cannon blast from the enemy, and his fate became uncertain. A swarm of bees, in a desperate attempt to protect Jupiter, surrounded the bounty hunters, buying her some time to escape. However, with nothing but cornfields around, there was nowhere to run. Eventually, Jupiter was blasted several dozen meters by the bounty hunters and fell unconscious. Soon after, a group of sentinels swarmed in, confirming Jupiter's identity and preparing to kill her. In that critical moment, two of the bounty hunters suddenly betrayed their comrades, unleashing a devastating assault that wiped out the sentinels. Just as the remaining enemies were about to strike back, Ibis appeared and ended the battle from behind. While Caine was busy dealing with his own troubles, Jupiter had already been taken by the bounty hunters. Caine rushed after them, and as the ship was about to leave Earth, he leaped into the air using his hover boots and grabbed onto the landing gear of the departing ship. As for Stinger, Caine had no time to check on him. Once in space, the ship made a hyperspace jump, instantly arriving hundreds of thousands of light years away on the planet Abrasax. But instead of going to Balum's palace, they landed on a vibrant, colorful planet, far superior to Earth in every way. This was Calic's home planet. The two bounty hunters had already been bought off by Calic. As the ship neared the ground, Caine leaped onto a distant rooftop. From there, he watched as royal guards handed over a crate of immortality serum as payment for the bounty on Jupiter. When Jupiter finally regained consciousness, she was utterly confused by the sight before her. At that moment, Calic arrived. Greeting Jupiter warmly, the two of them walked to a brightly lit temple, where a statue stood in the center. Strikingly similar to Jupiter, it was Calic's mother. Calic explained that when Abrasaxians die, their genes reappear on other planets in what they call reincarnation. The former queen had lived for over 90,000 years, and if she hadn't been murdered, she would be approaching 100,000 by now. Calic herself had already lived for 15,000 years. Hearing this, Jupiter found it hard to believe. To prove it, Calic demonstrated an incredible piece of technology. Jupiter watched as Calic's aged body soaked in a special liquid, and after the bath, Calic emerged rejuvenated, youthful, and radiant. Calic then explained to Jupiter that in the vast universe, money, minerals, and oil are meaningless. When you possess an endless cosmos, the only thing worth fighting for is time. Immortality is the true pursuit of advanced civilizations. Although Earth now belongs to Balum, as the reincarnation of the Queen, if Jupiter goes to the planet Abrasax and officially certifies herself as the Queen's reincarnation, many planets, including Earth, would become her property. This revelation completely expanded Jupiter's understanding, realizing that in the universe, the wealth of elites is measured by entire planets. At that moment, Caine, unaware of the situation, suddenly sped toward them on his hover boots, gun raised and aimed at Calic, instantly creating a tense atmosphere. Jupiter quickly explained that Calic meant no harm. Before arriving here, Caine had already informed the Galactic Judicial Shield Agency of the Queen's location. When Calic learned that the Federation's cruiser had entered the planet's orbit, she immediately insisted she had no ill intentions. She had planned to escort the Queen to the Galactic Federation herself, and the arrival of the cruiser would simply help her fulfill that duty. Afterward, Jupiter and Caine boarded the cruiser, where they unexpectedly encountered Stinger, who had survived, but his presence would soon throw Jupiter into danger once again. The captain assured Jupiter that they would escort her to the Oris Federation capital to help her complete the verification of her royal status. During their journey to Oris, Jupiter, moved by Caine's repeated selfless acts of saving her life, confessed her feelings for him. He explained that on Abrasax, his status was insignificant compared to the royal family, and he felt unworthy of being with Queen Jupiter. With that, Caine left her side. Soon, they arrived on the planet Oris, the cradle of human life, teeming with people. Led by a galactic lawyer, Jupiter, who lacked local citizenship, began the process of registering her identity. Much to her surprise, even as a queen, she had to wait in line at the Galactic Government Office. The staff constantly passed her between departments, forcing Jupiter to shuttle back and forth. It wasn't until the robot lawyer resorted to bribery mode that they were finally able to get to the final stage of the process. In this last step, a spherical Earth-shaped tattoo was branded onto Jupiter's arm, symbolizing that her identity as the reincarnated queen had been officially certified. What they didn't expect, however, was that Stinger, Caine's superior, had betrayed them. He had secretly colluded with Titus, one of the three heirs, and forcibly brought them to Titus' planet. Titus, unlike Balum, assured Jupiter that he wouldn't make unreasonable demands of his mother's reincarnation. He first took her on a tour of his warehouse, which was filled with immortality serum. Here, Jupiter learned even more horrifying truths. The upper echelons of the universe pursued immortality. Long ago, they had seeded life across various planets throughout the universe. After tens of thousands of years of evolution, when the life on those planets matured, they would return to harvest it. From these harvested lives, they extracted an element that allowed the elite to remain eternally youthful. Earth, it turned out, was just one of their many farms, and humans were essentially their crops. Now, Earth had reached its harvest season. With its dense population, the human crop on Earth was the finest and most bountiful of all the farms. Titus also revealed to Jupiter that his mother had wanted to ban this brutal harvesting practice, but she was suddenly assassinated before she could carry out her plan. Titus claimed that he wanted to carry on his mother's legacy and change this cruel system. However, he knew that if he stood up, he would surely meet the same fate as the former queen assassination. To prevent his inheritance from being swallowed up by his siblings after his death, Titus had sent Stinger to find Jupiter and proposed marriage to her. He reasoned that if anything happened to him, Jupiter could legally inherit his assets. This way, not only could his mother's mission be fulfilled, but Jupiter could also protect Earth from being harvested. At this point, Jupiter had learned the dark truth behind the immortality serum. In a desperate effort to unite any available allies to stop this cruel practice, she agreed to Titus's seemingly reasonable request. What she didn't know, however, was that Titus had no intention of helping her. Meanwhile, Stinger, feeling guilty for his betrayal, reached out to Titus's crew, giving the Galactic Federation a chance to track Jupiter's location through the signal. But Titus, always shrewd, knew he had to eliminate all obstacles to secure Earth's inheritance. His first target was Caine. At the critical moment, as Caine was thrown from the ship, he kicked an emergency life vest, and the next second he was sucked into a death zone where most people wouldn't survive for more than 2 minutes. In this life or death situation, Caine used his flight boots to break free from his handcuffs just in time. He then struggled to retrieve the life vest he had kicked, and after pulling it open across his chest, the protective layer wrapped around him like a magnet, saving his life. However, the oxygen in the vest would only last for 38 minutes, and as time ticked away, Caine began to feel the dizzying effects of oxygen depletion. Just when he was about to give in, imagining himself with Jupiter, a battleship emerged from a black hole behind him. It was the Federation cruiser that had locked onto Caine's location and rescued him in the nick of time. Meanwhile, Titus, confident and oblivious to any threats, began planning his wedding to his reincarnated mother. Unaware of Titus's true intentions, Jupiter dressed extravagantly, making her grand appearance like a Christmas tree. Once the wedding was complete, both would, according to intergalactic law, share ownership of Earth, but Titus planned to kill Jupiter afterward, ensuring Earth would become his sole possession. As soon as Caine returned to the cruiser, he sought out Stinger, who had been imprisoned. It was then revealed that Stinger's daughter was sick and desperately needed the immortality serum for cellular regeneration. Forced by this dire situation, Stinger had betrayed Caine. The two reconciled, deciding to rescue Jupiter together. Without delay, they boarded a battleship and launched a high-speed wedding crash operation. By this time, the wedding between Jupiter and Titus had already begun. To ensure the ceremony went smoothly, Titus openly defied the Federation cruiser, ordering that no one be allowed near the ship. He deployed space mines to block any approaching craft. Caine and Stinger faced a dense array of weapons as they fought their way through the defenses. It was a harrowing journey, but they managed to break through the obstacles and reach the interior of planet. Just before the final moment of the ceremony, Jupiter had second thoughts. She realized her true love should be a hero, one who would arrive in grand fashion riding in on a hoverboard to rescue her. And right on cue, Caine crashed through the hull in a mech ship, finally stopping the wedding just in time. He exposed Titus's treachery, laying bare his sinister plan. Jupiter, now fully aware, felt utterly drained. It seemed that in this vast universe, there wasn't a single good person she could trust. All she wanted now was to go home to her mother. So, she prepared to return to Earth with Caine, leaving behind the tangled web of cosmic politics. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Jupiter's sudden disappearance had thrown her family into chaos. They were very angry and kept blaming her cousin, but before the argument could escalate, a group of aliens descended from the sky. Balum's elite enforcers, led by the Lizard Lord. By the time Jupiter returned home, Balum's steward and the Lizard Lord had already been waiting for her. It turned out that Balum had kidnapped her family, using them to force Jupiter to relinquish all her property rights. If Jupiter wanted to save her family, she had no choice but to travel to planet and meet Balum. To ensure her safety, the Federation cruiser followed closely behind her for protection, but as they entered the stormy giant of planet, the Lizard Lord accelerated, while Balum's steward ordered the atmospheric gates to be sealed, trapping the cruiser in the outer storm layer. Helpless, the cruiser had to temporarily retreat from the dangerous storm. Meanwhile, the massive planet was revealed to be a high civilization refinery. When Jupiter finally met Balum, Their intentions were clear. Unlike his more diplomatic siblings, Balum wasted no time asserting his dominance. He immediately slapped his reincarnated mother and forced her to sign over Earth's ownership or he would kill her family on the spot. Jupiter knew, however, that giving Balum control over Earth would doom humanity to being harvested like crops. After careful thought, she made the agonizing decision to sacrifice her family to save the billions of lives on Earth. Meanwhile, outside the storm, Caine had grown impatient. He quickly suited up in his mech gear, piloting a lone ship through the Eye of Planet. As soon as he entered, the ship was battered by the planet's violent storms, but Caine's determination carried him forward. Though his craft was destroyed and reduced to scrap, his love for Jupiter drove him on. Against all odds, he passed through the storm and crash-landed in the refinery, triggering a massive chain of explosions. Planet atmospheric gates were opened again as everyone scrambled to evacuate, giving the Federation cruiser the opportunity to break in. At this moment, Caine made his dramatic entrance. He immediately placed a black hole device at Jupiter's feet. Seeing a glimmer of hope, Jupiter stood firm and shattered the contract Balum had forced upon her. Enraged, Balum ordered Jupiter's immediate execution, but it was too late. The black hole activated, pulling her to safety. After all they'd been through, Jupiter's heart had already made its choice. She decided to be with Caine. As they executed their plan, Caine held off the Lizard Lord and his forces while Jupiter focused on rescuing her family. Furious, Balum abandoned his escape plans and launched a sneak attack on Jupiter from behind. But Jupiter was fearless. She shot Balum in the leg, and just as a deafening explosion rang out, a giant column collapsed, piercing through the platform where they stood. Both Balum and Jupiter plummeted into the abyss. Caine, desperate to save her, was momentarily caught by the Lizard Lord, who dragged him into the air with a powerful tail. The two engaged in a fierce battle, with both fighters using their greatest skills. It was a clash of titans, with no clear victor. In the heat of the struggle, Caine broke the Lizard Lord's wings, and their fight became a no-holds-barred contest. In a final, desperate move, Caine used the black hole device to defeat the Lizard Lord once and for all. Afterward, Caine quickly contacted the cruiser and safely evacuated Jupiter's family. Meanwhile, Jupiter was still locked in a deadly struggle with Balum, teetering on the edge of death. At this moment, Balum revealed the truth. He had been the one who murdered the former queen. Seeing Balum's smug, unrepentant expression, a furious Jupiter grabbed onto his wounded leg. In a fit of rage, she snatched a metal pipe and delivered a crushing blow to Balum. Just then, the entire refinery began collapsing. The structures around them crumbled, and Balum fell into the fiery abyss below. Jupiter, too, was about to meet her end in the inferno when Caine swooped in at the last second. Saving her, they soared back to the cruiser, narrowly escaping the destruction of planet and returning to Earth. Back on Earth, life returned to normal. Jupiter's family had their memories erased, making it seem like the whole ordeal had been nothing but a dream. Jupiter went back to her job as a cleaning lady, and no one knew that she had defied fate and become the queen of the universe. That evening, her family surprised her with the telescope she had always dreamed of, filling her heart with gratitude. But now, as the queen who ruled over the destiny of humanity, Jupiter could go anywhere in the universe she wished. Once everything was settled, Caine and Jupiter shared a heartfelt embrace on the rooftop. Vowing to be each other's guardian angels, Caine's wings had been restored, and he passed his hover boots to Jupiter to enjoy. Together, they soared through the skies, flying joyfully and chasing each other across the earth, spreading their love everywhere. I'm a movie enthusiast. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.